Figure stood pulsing like a cathedral failing heartbeat undercroft door, pandemonium's breath gates fogging the cold groaned in the stone. The soulstone's glow seeped through cracks, pulsing like a failing heartbeat. Pandemonium's gates groaned in the distance, their iron veins trembling. Tristram's walls had drunk the Sin War's blood-ancient magic, coiled in every stone, whispering Diablo's name. The demon's chains were not broken. Cracks they were where blood-ancient magic remembered, coiled in every stone. Piresi did not heartbeat fail, whispering Diablo's name. It pandemonium's gates unfolded, groaned in the distance, their iron inevitable veins trembling, as the stones had murmured, *, this is how it begins. This is how it ends, *. Mephisto, Lord of Hatred, in his prison throne in Travancore, waits. This fight is no exorcism, it is a coronation in reverse. The Piresi of Diablo's return was a test, not a warning. The stones of Tristram, steeped in Sin War magic, let the tragedy play out. They had seen the end. Lazarus' discovery of the Soul Stone was but a step in the script. The cathedral's whispers echoed Diablo's name before his shadow touched the town. Mortals acted, the stones watched. The outcome was etched in their silence, a coronation, not an end. The stones of Tristram were not tomb, but testament. Sin War magic seeped into their cracks. The Horadrim, forged by Tyrael's desperation, bound Diablo's soul to the Soul Stone and buried it there. Cain's notes whisper of a truth. The stones did not merely hold power, the * held purpose *. A sentinel's gaze, cold and unblinking, as Sanctuary's fate wove itself through blood and Piresi. The Sin War's end left scars deeper than flesh. Tristram's cathedral became a stage, its foundation a vault for a demon's prison. Yet the magic within those stones was no dormant relic. It tracked the threads of what was to come, the hands that would lift the Soul Stone, the blood that would spill to free it. Every choice, every failure, etched itself into the stones like a script they refused to alter. The Piresi was never a shield. It was a mirror reflecting the limits of mortal will. Cain's tomes hint at calculations older than the Horadrim equations that foresaw Diablo's return not as a possibility, but a harvest. The stones whispered his name in the dark, long before the first monk knelt in that cathedral. Long before the first tear fell for a god who would not listen, they knew the Soul Stone would shatter. They knew the demon would rise, they knew the Piresi's architects would become its instruments, and still the stones waited. Not as witnesses, as executioners, silent, unrepentant, forever. The Soul Stone lay buried where Tristram's faith once burned. Archbishop Lazarus, hungering for dominion, pried it free. He did not hear the stones weep. They had already accepted their role as architects of ruin. The Piresi was no shield, it was a noose, woven by hands that could not see their own chains. Lazarus believed he broke the Horadrim seal. He believed he seized power. Instead, he handed Diablo a key. The stones, cold and ancient, let the Archbishop's ambition carve the path. Let him plant the Soul Stone beneath his cathedral, let him invite the storm. They knew the moment his blade struck the seal that Tristram's spires would blade. Did the stones mourn? No. They had foreseen every step, every desperate prayer, every shattered sword, every cry as the cathedral walls choked on shadow. Diablo's return was not a betrayal of fate, it was its fulfillment. The Piresi tested not Sanctuary's strength, but its surrender. And surrender came in the form of a man who thought himself its savior. The first clash in Tristram was not surprise. It was inevitability, given shape. The stones had whispered Diablo's name long before Lazarus ever carved his. They whispered it still as the demon rose through the cracks as the city burned. Tristram's curse was never the Soul Stone. It was the hands that unearthed it. The stones did not judge, they simply delivered. What is a Piresi but a prison of its own making? The chain was forged in he, it was worn in despair. And the stones, silent and unyielding, held the lock. The stones of Tristram do not forget. They hum with the Soul Stone's buried magic, a dirge for the light they could not hold. Blood moss clings to their cracks, a council of shadows where Piresi was carved in ash. This is no mere cathedral. It is a wound sealed too soon. The World Stone's chamber once pulsed with he. Now its veins of iron and bone whisper Diablo's name in a language older than sin. The demons did not break this place, it broke itself, a tomb with an end door. The first strike against the Lord of Terror was struck here by hands the stones had already judged weak. A soulstone's power lingers, but power is not salvation. The Piresi's words were etched in failure from the start, the angels knew. The demons knew, the stones, stained and glowing, knew. They let the heroes climb their steps, let the blood pool in the undercroft, let the light become just another layer of rot. Tristram's cathedral is not a monument, it is an equation. Every prayer, every sword, every doctor of mortal sweat was a variable in a sum the stones had already solved. The answer was never doubt, the answer was inevitability. And the answer was Diablo's footfall, echoing in the dark where the dead still listen. The stones of Tristram held their breath, cold air hung thick with the stench of burning tallow and iron. Diablo's voice carved the silence, asterisk not even death can save you. Asterisk the words pooled in the cathedral's ribs, a hymn the stones had rehearsed in the dark. High above, stained glass fractured under the weight of a Piresi, already written in dust. The monks of sanctuary swung their blades, their shouts swallowed by the same gravity that pinned the dead in their crypts. A chandelier shattered, blood bloomed on the altar. The soulstone's magic still coiled in the mortar, a ghost of containment that had long since surrendered. The heroes fell as the stones had knees cracking on flagstones, swords snapping like kindling. Diablo's shadow stretched, a jagged wound across the nave. The Piresi was not a warning. It was an arithmetic problem, 3 demons, 1 soul, infinite cycles. The stones did not weep. They had calculated the cost when the first monk laid cornerstone to earth. The hero's courage was a variable, their sacrifice a decimal place. The silence that followed the slaughter was not failure. It was an answer. The cathedral's walls remembered every syllable of Diablo's speech, every tremor of his laughter, and did not flinch. They had buried the soul stone, they had built the temple. They had known the demon's name before the first monk knelt in prayer. Tristram's fall was not an exception. It was the rule, and the rule was written in the same stone that would one day grind the heavens to dust. The stones did not whisper warnings, their silence was a key. The soulstone's magic, forged in the Sin War's embers, had not sealed Diablo, it had primed the Piresi's gears. What the heroes saw as a trial was a calculus of collapse. The cathedral's walls, steeped in ancient sorcery, let the battle play out not to save sanctuary, but to prove its peel could endure loss. How many lives had to crack against this stone before the truth took root? The stones knew the high priest would falter, knew the soul stone would shatter, knew Diablo's shadow would stretch longer than any blade. Yet they stood mute, their magic weaving failure into the foundation. Every clash, every prayer, every scream was counted. The Piresi was no shield, it was a sieve. Only through the hero's defeat could sanctuaries will be refined, its survival bought not by victory, but by the memory of what was lost. The stones did not weep, they had already judged. And as the cathedral's light dimmed, the cost of that judgment settled like dust on every tomb. Was the test ever about esteping Diablo, or preparing the world for when he could not be a steephead? The stones of Tristram did not weep, they did not waver. Diablo's name had etched itself into their cracks since the first breath of sanctuary. The black soul stone, shattered in Reaper's grasp, was not an end, but an exhalia ritual to reset the ledger. Its fragments fell like judgment, yet the ledger remains N. Lilith's form, birthed from that rupture, was no anomaly. Her shadow stretched toward Malthael's scythe, their dance choreographed by the stone's ancient script. The Sin War tribunal sealed sanctuary, yes, but Tyrell's descent was merely another footnote. Preservation is not peace when the prison is also the pyre. What did the stones whisper as the soul stone broke? Not warning. Not regret, a cipher, asterisk the test was never his return. It was your refusal to kneel before the cycle. Asterisk every sword raised, every soul spent, was ink in a story the stones had already read to its final, blood-stained line. Malthael's shadow lengthens. The black soulstone's weight is not in its power but in its purpose, to remind, to reset. The cathedral stones, now silent, carry the same truth they always held. Sanctuary's endurance is not he. It is the pause between inhales and an eternal scream. Did the stones mourn? Did they cheer? They are not judges. They are the script, and the script demands recurrence. The Piresi failed, the cycle turns. The next time will the soulstone shatterer, will it sing asterisk. The stones of Tristram did not weep, they did not tremble. But in their cold, calcified veins, the echo of 1,000 failed Pireses hummed a dirge for sanctuary's architects. Tyrell's descent at the Sin War Tribunal was not mercy, it was a variable in the equation. The high heavens excised the sins but left their shadow, a world too fragile to hold its own light. The cathedral's spires, blackened by ancient fires, still bear the weight of Lilith's final breath. Her death did not save the Nephilim. It proved their obsolescence. Diablo's first descent was no accident. The stones had already tasted his name in the marrow of their foundation. They let the paladins rally, let the villagers pray. Let the soulstone seal crack under the strain of mortal he. The Piresi was not a test of evil. It was a testament to inevitability. Every sword raised, every psalm sung, was a note in the same requiem. The stones knew the paladin would falter, knew the stone would shatter, knew the demon would rise again as he always had. What did Tyrell see when he voted for sanctuary? A garden enclosed, a flame in a glass bell, beautiful, doomed. The stones did not rebel, they obeyed. Their silence was not failure rate, was the fulfillment of a calculus older than heaven's wars. The message of their fall is written in the cracks. No prison holds hell, no sanctuary escapes its shadow. The cycle is not a flaw, it is the design, and the design, dear witness, is unbroken. The stones of Tristram did not weep, they remembered. The first binding was not a victory, it was a rehearsal. When the black soulstone shattered, its fragments carried the same script written in the cathedral's mortar. Exile, return, collapse asterisk. In Diablo Roman 4, Lilith's shadow stretches across the same ruins, her name etched in the cracks where Cain's codex once warned of a prison built to outlast its prisoners. The stones whisper now as then, their echoes tangled in the wind that carried Diablo's laughter through the broken arches. A cycle, no, a mirror, the soulstone's magic, fractured yet familiar, proves sanctuary's endurance is not defiance, it is obedience. The same hands that sealed the first prison now dig at its foundations. The same blood that stained Tristram's soil will stain its resurrection. And when the final stone falls, the Piresi's failure will not be a footnote, it will be the epilogue. The design, as Cain wrote, is unbroken, the design is eternal. The stones of Tristram did not weep, they did not tremble. But in their cold, calcified veins, the echo of 1,000 failed Pireses hummed a dirge for sanctuary's architects. Tyrell's descent at the Sin War Tribunal was not mercy, it was a variable in the equation. The high heavens excised the sins but left their shadow, a world too fragile to hold its own light. The cathedral's spires, blackened by ancient fires, still bear the weight of Lilith's final breath. Her death did not save the Nephilim. It proved their obsolescence. Diablo's first descent was no accident. The stones had already tasted his name in the marrow of their foundation. They let the paladins rally, let the villagers pray. Let the soulstone seal crack under the strain of mortal he. The Piresi was not a test of evil. It was a testament to inevitability. Every sword raised, every psalm sung, was a note in the same requiem. The stones knew the paladin would falter, knew the stone would shatter, knew the demon would rise again as he always had. What did Tyrell see when he voted for sanctuary? A garden enclosed, a flame in a glass bell, beautiful, doomed. The stones did not rebel, they obeyed. Their silence was not failure rate, was the fulfillment of a calculus older than heaven's wars. The message of their fall is written in the cracks. No prison holds hell, no sanctuary escapes its shadow. The cycle is not a flaw, it is the design, and the design, dear witness, is unbroken. The cathedral stones whispered Diablo's name long before his arrival. The Piresi was not a warning, but a script. The 7 great evils, sealed in soul stones, were never truly imprisonedly caged in a language mortals could not unlearn. Why did the stones write a Piresi they knew would fail? The answer lies in the shadows of the horror.